How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk Guys. As requested, we have a very big deep dive in the case out of Texas. Ding dong ditch to murder when childhood mischief turns deadly. What we're going to do is break down the case, answer the questions that you may have. And I'm also bringing on two guests for this show because there's a lot to cover here. My guests are going to be Russ Hamilton and Joe Papano. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring them in first, have them introduce themselves. Then we're going to break down this whole case as detailed as possible. And then I got your questions that I'm going to ask to our guests, myself, and we're going to kind of dissect this case. And I'll guarantee you the information you're going to get here, you're not getting anywhere else. So let me get Russ on. What up, Russ? All right, so let me unmute you, Russ. There you go. Can you unmute yourself, Russ?
I'm unmuted.
Yeah. Hey, Russ, you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Russ Hamilton. I'm a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I'm also a former senior juvenile correctional officer. I am also currently working for a private company where we do reentry and rehabilitation work at a local county jail where I'm a case manager and for a local county probation department. I am also the founder of Keepers of Chaos. Let's see, what else? Oh, yes, I'm also an author. I have a book out right now called Killing Complacency. It's tactical awareness for corrections professionals. And I am also the current founder of the Correctional Cadre, which will be coming online soon, and people should be looking for that. I think it's going to maybe help change the way we do in corrections, and it is focused on being a correctional community for everybody to further basically the profession.
All right, and then I also got Joe. What up, Joe?
Hey, what's happening, guys?
It's been a while. Joe lives in Texas, by the way. Hey, Joe, you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant from the Texas Department of Corrections, 29 years, 6 months. Currently working as an assistant jail administrator in our local sheriff's department in the jail division and a panel member here for Tier Talk.
Yes, it's great to have anyone. Guys, if you get a chance, also, I'd recommend, if I could recommend one of my own books, maybe two if I could recommend. This one right now is available on Amazon, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. And this really does have, it may take place in the prison, but there's a lot of real world application here. So if you guys get a chance, I would check that out. Okay, I'm going to do a whole big recap here. We're going to be talking about this case out of Texas. We're going to break away from the Emmanuel Harrow case. And now we are going to start focusing a little bit on the death of Julian Guzman. So this is Julian Guzman right here on the right, 11 years old. And the person to his left is Gonzalo Leon Jr. He's 42, U.S. Army veteran. And right now he is charged with murder of that young boy. Here's another picture there of the young boy who's 11. So let me go ahead and break this down. So date and time, let's go back to Saturday, August 30th, 2025 at approximately 10:55 p.m. Some sources say just after 11 p.m., but one report stretched it to 11:30 p.m., but police records right now point to 10:55. We have a victim, Julian Guzman, 11 years old, attending a family birthday in Houston, Clinton Park. The prank. After the gathering, Julian and his cousin played Ding Dong Ditch, approaching multiple homes. At Leon's house, they knocked at least 3 times for over 15 minutes. And the shooter, Gonzalo Leon Jr., 42, U.S. Army veteran, he did not answer his door, but instead waited, concealed behind a fence. And that's somewhere, I believe, between the second and third knock. So basically, I think the kids would knock, run off. Kids would knock again, then run off. And this time around, when they went to go knock on the third time, I believe that's where they said Gonzalo Leon was hiding. And then eventually he shot one as a warning shot. And then eventually as the kid ran off, the second one went into the back of young Julian. So let me just read you a little bit about Gonzalo Leon Jr. So he's confirmed to be a U.S. Army infantryman, serving from August 2013 to December of 2016, reaching the rank of specialist. During his service, he was deployed to Afghanistan from November 2014 to April of 2015. After active duty, he continued service in the Texas National Guard until May of 2021. His defense attorney has characterized him as a disabled veteran, indicating that he sustained injuries while serving. At the time of his arrest, Leon was also noted to be a community college student enrolled at San Jacinto College Maritime Campus. He's also known to work as a restaurant manager and as a father. The shooting, so again, after the third knock, here they are. Leon allegedly fired one shot into the ground before firing a second shot into Julian's back as the boy fled. Julian collapsed in the street. His cousin ran for help. Julian's phone recording captured the prank, the gunfire, and his labored breathing. He died on Sunday, August 31st, 2025. Weapons found. Police seized 20 firearms, AR rifles, shotguns, pistols, and grenades from Leon's home. Now, the arrest of Leon's interesting because Leon was arrested on September 2nd at a La Quinta motel in La Porte. Prosecutors believe he was preparing to flee, but the defense claims he was hiding from media attention. The charges are he's charged with murder, prosecutors considering capital murder, so life without parole or death penalty, even though I read something that said the prosecutor's not interested in death penalty if it's pushed for a capital murder. And the court update on September 3rd, bond set at $1 million. Next hearing scheduled for October. Now, guys, we're going to break down what the prosecutor may do. We're going to talk about Texas law as well as we go down in regard to the death penalty and capital murder. But I want to kind of keep how I have this show organized. So the first thing I want to know is that when they're looking at the case, the biggest thing right now is, from what I'm hearing, is they need a timeline. So they want fact-driven sequencing eliminates speculation. So multiple knocks goes to concealment. So by the third knock, he hides. Then you got the shooting, and then you got the phone evidence, which cements the timeline. So I'll go with Joe first and Russ. Walk me through those 15 minutes from Leon's perspective. So Leon, again, is the person being accused of the shooting. At what point does annoyance become justification for murder in someone's mind? You're muted, Joe. You're muted, Joe.
All right. So, it's kind of hard to say from his perspective because with him being an Army vet, you don't know what's going on in his mind. If he's receiving any kind of mental health help, due to the disabilities of being deployed and everything else. I really don't foresee him thinking that it was intruder because most intruders don't ring the bells. Some do as a surprise attack, but given the fact that it was almost, I'd say, a known fact that these kids had done this to other houses. I think he was aware of what was going on. To me, him opening, him coming, going to the door and seeing these kids running away, should have been the first indicator.
Yeah, and then don't forget, he also went between the second and third knock. He went to conceal himself, so he was waiting. So most likely, by the time the kids decided to get to that third knock, I will guarantee you, he knew that was a little boy. Yeah, because he could clearly see him. He supposedly shot a warning shot and then shot the kid when they were running away. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? What's your thoughts with that first 15 minutes from Leon's perspective?
Well, yeah, so that's really disturbing. There's no justification in this for a rational person. When I look at this too, I'm not as familiar obviously with Texas law, but in California, laying in wait is a special circumstance that can trigger the death penalty. I just think that in this case, there shouldn't be a lot of sympathy for him, and it doesn't seem that he's getting any. Now, as to his actual state of mind and things like that, saying that he's disabled, he might be on some heavy duty medication that can put him in that frame of mind, and some other things like that. Of course, when we look at the years that he was active in the Army, maybe there's some PTSD facets in there, but nothing justifies this, obviously. And what I'm talking about is of course only what the defense is going to start trying to look. The defense is going to want to rehabilitate him in the eyes of the public, because this is getting public scrutiny now. And eventually they're going to, want to try and find some avenue to diminish what that penalty could be. I think that it's an uphill battle for them.
Yeah, and this could turn out to be another gun right concern, because now if you have someone that does have, or they may try to push mental health concerns, PTSD, now people may say, well, guns in the hands of people with mental health problems. I mean, so it's crazy how the news may eventually try to twist this. You know what's funny is one day I was working third shift, not too long ago, actually. My wife gives me a call. It was Halloween of last year, and she goes, hey, someone keeps ringing the doorbell. We don't know who it is. Now, granted, we know that there's pranks going on TikTok. Some are ding-dong ditches, but some are actually kicking doors.
Yeah.
Which is insane, because at that point, it's like someone's going to try to invade your home. So that's a little bit more aggressive. But in this case, they're ringing the doorbell. So I'm like, okay, we're in a little suburban neighborhood, so maybe it's a bunch of kids. So they did it once. Okay, fine. I said, babe, it's probably just a bunch of kids playing ding-dong ditch. But with that said, let me know, whatever. She calls me back. She goes, they're doing it again. Now, this was unique for me, because back in the day, when we played it as kids, I just remember going to different houses. I don't remember doing the same house multiple times. I remember ringing the doorbell, running, and then going to another house. But in this case here, they're probably ringing the doorbell, probably videotaping the person's response, then going back, doing it again, because there's definitely going to be social media involved here. We'll get to that, because obviously he got himself being videoed. So this is they're being motivated by social media. I'm not saying the kid did anything wrong, but I just want to put out there that this social media shit is becoming more dangerous, because people are taking more risk. And what happened here is, sadly, I'm not minimizing what the person did here, but they picked the wrong house too. Let's not forget they did a prank, but they pranked the wrong house. So now my wife gets another doorbell. I said, okay, babe, you know what? You may want to call the police. I'll call Ray, just to kind of raise our neighbor. I'll call him and have him check in on you, see what I can do if I can try to get home. So I don't know if she calls the police right away, because Ray winds up helping us out. But then they do it one more time. And this time when she opens the door, they're at the front of my lawn, which is a few yards away, all in costume. Now, from a distance, she doesn't know how old they are, but it is a bit freaky. So she winds up yelling out, I know who you kids are, which she really didn't, but she put it out there. And the one kid got what he wanted, gave her the finger, gave my wife the finger, and then kind of ran off. So there was a few of them. So I told my wife, like, God forbid my wife opens up the door and the kid's right there. It's on. You open up the door, the kid's right there. You don't know what you're dealing with. I would expect my wife to try her best to protect herself, as best she could. But the thing is, if it's something that's a threat or danger, I also told her, call the police. Try to make an effort to call the police and stay indoors. I would not tell my wife, hey, go find out who it is. Don't call the police. Go outside, hide in the bushes, and when they come to your door, shoot at them. I just think that point there, to me, was a bit unique. Now, granted, if you open the door and they start coming into the house, I know, they're young kids, but if it's my wife and two kids, you don't know what those kids have on you. That's different. You have a right to protect your home and kind of deal with the consequences later. But this guy, I think the big concern here for this guy is two things. He, between the second and third knock, I think he knew they were kids. He hid out with his weapon behind some spot where he could conceal himself. And then at any moment, he could have called for police. He could have called for help. He could have done something, but he didn't. And then the kids take off, and then he shoots the one kid in the back after a warning shot. He shot a warning shot. That warning shot shows you that basically he thought this through. And then eventually the kids are running, and then he shoots the Julian in the back. And you got the cousin that was with him that's a witness to this whole thing. And then on top of that, he flees. He runs to a hotel with his family saying he's doing it for media attention. No, I think he fled because he knew what he did was wrong. So you have the premeditated action, like Russ said, of him concealing himself. But then you have what he did afterwards, which he ran away and with a bunch of clothes and everything, probably to prepare to be on the run. I think that's a greater concern too. I mean, would you think so, Russ?
Yeah, it's gonna make it hard for them to do anything with regards to diminished capacity or not doing right from wrong. and those kind of things. So, but that's just something that though that defense attorneys do. They always, they try and minimize what happened. They try and justify it, in the minds of the public, and so they will run around and they will say things like oh, he was fearful from what the kid was doing, and there's nothing that indicates anything like this. I think this is going to be one of those cases, that might go all the way in Texas, because there's just so little meat on the bone for the defendant in this case. I don't think he's going to have any way to justify, mitigate, or otherwise, get over in any way on this.
Yeah, I agree. And Joe, I mean, he concealed himself, probably gave him a position of advantage. I don't see them trying to play that he was in danger, because obviously he wasn't in danger. So I'm thinking they may try the PTSD. They may try a bunch of things. But again, he wasn't in danger, and the kid was clearly running away. So, I mean, what argument could he possibly have?
Yeah, given the fact that he fired a warning shot, even that's a step too far, but that that's where it should have ended. He should have just called the police, let the police handle it, let the police find the kids, give them a good ass chewing, and send them on home. Playing ding dong ditch today versus when we did it 40 years ago, it's a whole different time now. Damn near everybody has guns. It's not like it was back in our day where, we just got cussed out by some old person and we giggled, went on about our way. I do see the defense bringing in his VA records, his deployment records. There's going to be quite a lot that the defense is going to be able to put their hands on regarding his defense on this. I've seen it in other cases. Not just PTSD, but other mental issues that come with being deployed. And same, I'm not minimizing what this guy did. Shooting this kid in the back was wrong. He seen the kid clearly running away. And, at that point, he should have just called the police and let them handle it. But I can guarantee you, once this thing goes to trial, that the defense is going to have their hands full, because, VA records, his Army medical records, if there's any mental health records that are going to be available, which I'm sure there will be, because it's pretty much almost a requirement that, they send you to a mental health professional when you come back from a deployment. So, the defense is going to have plenty there to put their hands on to mount a good defense, and I'm not saying, a good defense to get this guy cleared. But I think it's going to be a hell of a fight between manslaughter and murder.
Yeah, and guys, I think that obviously they got him dead to rights here, so they're going to try to limit accountability by pushing for some level of mental health, pushing the military card, or pushing something that can maybe note some PTSD. But I think, and we're going to get to it later on, but I think the prosecutor is going to be aware of this, and I have a discussion that will cover that when we go into it.
I can't believe this guy had grenades in his house. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's what I saw in my research. So, guys, I'm getting the research from different magazines. So if you guys know more, know different, please.
And just as a side note, the city of LaPorte is only about 20 miles from Houston. It's not far at all from Houston. I don't know if he was trying to flee, or maybe he was, maybe he had family there. But the actual city of LaPorte it's a big refinery town next to Pasadena. And like I said, it's not very far from Houston at all. Maybe a 20-25 minute drive, if even that.
Yeah, and guys, I want to mention, so some of these pranks that they do, I'm putting innocent of the prank versus perceived threat. I mean, the kids, if you guys are doing this, you may know it's a prank, but the people you're doing it to doesn't. And a lot of these people from social media are getting themselves hurt because they may try to think it's funny, but the people on the other end, they don't think it's funny. And now you're going into people's homes, almost going on their porch, going onto their property, and people are going to be very protective of their home for obvious reasons. Again, I'm not giving them an excuse. I'm just saying this for the people that think they are okay with doing these pranks. You're going on someone's property. And I know for a fact when you're on someone's property, there's no rules here. I don't care. I'll worry about the consequences later. Granted, I think this guy went a little too far by hiding and then shooting the child. I'm wondering if they knew each other at all too, by the way, because that was one of the houses he targeted. I wonder if they knew or they just randomly picked the house. So I put innocence of the prank versus perceived threat. So I got children see it as innocent mischief. Leon may have perceived it as targeted harassment, generational cultural divides in interpreting pranks, and plus with military service that may have heightened threat perception. So I wanted to ask this question. And by the way, these are questions that are coming my way. Why do pranks spark such different emotional responses between children and adults? When did we lose the ability to see kids just being kids? You have an answer? I'll have you go first, Joe, on that.
Well, again, it's a different day and time. We got kids, we got younger generations creating, carrying out, horrendous crimes now versus, back then. For kids, for some kids, what they may perceive as pranks, nowadays with the way the world is, it's not funny to people anymore. People don't have the patience or the thick skin that the people had back in the day when we committed these pranks. But then again, we weren't seeing the atrocities and the horrendous crimes that we're seeing, of today. And I really think that, people are, not only skittish, but also worried because, you hear about all these crimes where people are getting their doors kicked in while they're at home, getting robbed, getting shot, people in their cars, people are just walking up and shooting them, people on the street, walking up to them, shooting them and robbing them. I mean, it's just a whole different day and time now. And, the innocence of the pranks, especially the ones that are being, publicized on social media, YouTube, whatever the case is, I think I really think it's a ill-advised practice that these kids need to be doing because, at some point, someone's not going to think it's funny anymore. Somebody's going to perceive it as a threat. And, then they got themselves caught in a position where, do I sit here and take the chance of getting shot or do I shoot and take the chance on being convicted of murder? There's no cut and dry anymore.
And granted, even if it was an adult, he had ample time to call the police. Then he went out, concealed himself, and shot the person in the back. So, yes, it happens to be a young child, but even if this was an adult, he still would have put himself in a bad position.
Yeah, absolutely. In Texas, if the person is making a retreat from your property, you cannot shoot them in the back. If you do, you're no longer covered under the castle doctrine.
Yeah, so people, and then because someone's like, well, it's 11 p.m. Who expects it to be a kid? Well, the problem is he actually would have known it was a kid because he concealed himself to where he had the advantage to see who was coming to the door for that third time. Then he shot a warning shot. Then he shot the kid in the back. But either way, even if he didn't expect it to be a kid, he thought it doesn't change anything because he had the advantage and they were running from the house. What's your thoughts on this, Russ?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that there's a little bit of a problem with the way they're defining that first shot. To say that it's a warning shot when the person's already warning away, I think that that's a shot to terrorize or a shot to have them stop and put them in a better position to take more shots. So I don't know if the way Texas law goes, if that could be some kind of act of terror or terrorizing before the final shot with regards to killing him. But I think that I don't like the way that's phrased in the media right now, calling it a warning shot, because it clearly wasn't.
I wonder if that could have been a miss shot. But yeah, that's a good point, Russ. I agree with that. I mean, how do we know it's a warning shot? And maybe he admitted it was a warning shot, but We don't really know that. That's something that hasn't come out yet. How did they determine that was a warning shot? So now for the next part, I got use of force and the myth of self-defense. So Texas Castle Doctrine protects against imminent threat, not annoyance. Julian was fleeing, shot in the back. Police ruled out self-defense quickly. Misunderstanding, some assume Castle Doctrine equals free pass. So I'll go with Russ first. Why do people confuse property protection with a license to kill? And what's the difference between feeling threatened and actually being in danger?
So I think that when you're thinking about what self-defense is your perception of the threat and the fear that you hold has to be a reasonable one. It can't just be non-specific. It can't be just, oh, I was afraid for my life. You have to be able to articulate what goes on with regards to that. And so this guy, I mean, how is he going to articulate that if he chooses a self-defense, which he would have to be an idiot to do that, because a self-defense claim is is an affirmative defense. You don't get to stand there and be silent. You actually have to prove that you felt that you were in danger for whatever reason. And there's no way any attorney is going to let him do something as stupid as that, I would think. I think that they're really going to work, some type of angle and try and get it, diminished down to something less than a capital offense. Good luck on that. So I don't know. That's just the way I see it, though, because this is beyond any type of justification. This is beyond being able to say, oh, it's it falls within Castle Doctrine, because there's no apparent way he could even believe that this child was a threat to him. I mean, he could have even gone out there armed to take a look and saw, hey, it's no threat. And that would have been fine. That would have been, actually, oh, someone's harassing me potentially. But at some point he knew. And the fact that he concealed himself in the bushes and was able to do surveillance on the target before he was approached for that third time or fourth time, whatever it was, it just speaks bad. And was he irritated to the point where he felt like he was justified to kill someone? Well, there's nobody that thinks that's reasonable. I don't think it's reasonable.
Yeah, and you made a good point here. I want to mention, guys, no one's saying an 11-year-old can't be a threat, because believe it or not, there could be. I mean, if my wife opened the door and she gets bombarded by an 11-year-old, it could be a threat. You don't know in that moment. But what kills him, what's his name? My mind's going blank here. Leon. What kills Leon is the fact that, like Russ said, he went outside, put himself in a position of advantage to surveillance, and then ultimately took two shots, and one of them was when the kid was running away. So there's no way anybody would believe that you were dealing with a threat in that moment. Because, again, they have to sell the fact that any reasonable person would believe that was a threat. What's your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, the minute the kids were running away, the threat was gone. Once the kid was running away, it's done. It's over. It should have been a moot point at that time. He can't say that it was self-defense or Castle Doctrine. It'd been a different story if these kids were, like a similar case that happened a while back where, these three kids had weapons. They all had automatic, semi-automatic pistols in their hands, kicking in a door, and the homeowner shot through the door and wound up killing all three individuals. There's a difference. There's a difference where, kids ringing a doorbell and running away versus, people standing at your door trying to kick your door in with weapons in their hands. At that point, you have a perceived threat. The minute that this little boy was running away, there was no threat. There was no weapon. He had nothing in his hands. So a lot of people think, well, if you're on my property, no, it's not. That's not the case in Texas. Even if they're on your property, if they're running away or they're retreating from you, it's no longer a threat, and you can't shoot. If they're advancing towards you and they got something in their hand, regardless if it's a pipe, a bat, a knife, a gun, then you got a leg to stand on. But as long as they're retreating from you, that person is considered no longer a threat. Therefore, use of force is not justified.
Yeah, and guys, when we were looking at this case, the Ding Dong Ditch case here, one thing we definitely looked at is preparation. So obviously we're focusing a lot on him going out, concealing himself, looking at everything. And then eventually later on, as we discussed, him running away. You know, after he shot the kid, he didn't call it in, right? He ran. He basically was found in a hotel. So right off the bat, you know, usually maybe even if someone did something in self-defense, they may still make a phone call. Hey guys, I need the police here. Someone came into my home. Someone did this and I shot them. And, you know, you do the right thing. But in this case here, he went off and got caught a few days later. So I have to touch on preparation versus reaction. So Leon didn't react instantly. As Russ said, he lay in wait behind a fence, which indicates forethought versus fear. And a strong factor. And that's look at how powerful that is real quick. That shows forethought versus fear because he hid in waiting, surveilling to get the upper hand. That's not fear. That's someone that's planning to act. And the strong factor in raising charges for capital murder. They're really going to lean on him waiting while he's surveilling them and then basically waiting in concealment until he was able to get possibly that perfect shot. So I'll go with Joe first. Does planning an ambush change how we judge motive compared to an impulsive reaction?
Yeah, you know, what he did was clearly preparation. You know, lying in wait is not a part of the use of force, deadly use of force. You know, firing the warning shot, not part of the use of force. If you consider an imminent threat, you're gonna shoot directly. You know, his reaction to him, you know, running off to LaPorte with his family, you know, to me kind of tells me that after said and done, after the cops came out, did their investigation, did what they were going to do, you know, I'm pretty sure the oh shit factor probably kicked in for him. You know, whether or not he was doing it to protect his family from the media, I don't know. Can't say, you know, as to his mental status at that point in time. But it was definitely a reaction. You know, I'm sure if he stuck around in that neighborhood, he was probably going to catch a ration of shit from people, protesters, you know, what have you, which is, you know, one of the big things down here. But just the fact that this guy laid in wait, you know, for this kid, you know, something tells me that the alleged warning shot wasn't a warning shot. It kind of tells me it was a missed shot. And, you know, I'm just, you know, I hated that boy died. But I kind of think that he was probably aiming for both of them.
That's a good point. The first shot could have been that. I mean, now it's funny because, guys, that's why the timeline matters. Timeline will show you him preparing. And again, I don't know. I doubt, like Russ said, I doubt they're going to put the case of self-defense because that would be more reactionary. When you can clearly see in the timeline what he did, you could clearly probably see him going into concealment and then shooting the boy as they're running away. So again, that's why they'll probably push some mental health concerns or whatnot. But hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on this question? Does planning an ambush change how we judge motive compared to an impulsive reaction?
Yeah, absolutely. That has historically been the gold standard for you know, a first degree murder offense is, you know, malice aforethought is the way they put it, you know, and so there's not really you know, I mean, within the case there's a distinguishing difference, but they view it as the same. Going to someone's house armed and breaking in order to assault and kill them is malice aforethought, as is lying in wait and catching them unawares so that you have the upper hand and can you know, administer the killing shot. It's the same thing. In California, there's basically 27 special circumstances. And so in this case, I think in California, he would definitely at least meet two, lying in wait and the age and vulnerability of the victim, possibly a couple of others, depending on the type of weaponry he used and some other factors. So, you know, in my opinion, he's basically toast. they're gonna fight. His attorney is gonna fight a fight that's a losing fight, and then it's gonna be over.
Yeah, and I moves this over to weapons, and now I'm gonna definitely go to Russ first on this one, but weapons and state of mind. And guys, this one may be a bit controversial, but I have to ask it because it can come up. So you got 20 firearms. From what I'm being told, this is what I'm being told: 20 firearms, grenades discovered. It's great about having a true crime channel. People are able to give you some information, but you still got to check it a little bit. So 20 firearms, grenades discovered, legal ownership of volume raises concern. And was it lawful collecting? Was it lawful connecting? Could it be paranoia or just preparation? I mean, living in a neighborhood with kids complicates perception. But Russ, at what point, this is the question here, Russ, at what point does exercising your Second Amendment rights become a red flag for dangerous instability? Ain't that the question?
Well, so we have no prior history on this guy at all. Right. What we have is the initial prior act here. So we'll start with that. A person's ability to, to have and own firearms. I am all about that because I think that the average individual is a lot less dangerous than any particular government is. The problem with the grenades is that those are going to be destructive devices. And they're going to fall definitely under Texas state law and federal law. And because they're destructive devices, that's a huge penalty right there. He's probably looking at each of those. I have not looked this up yet, but I would be willing to bet that those are at least 20 years apiece. So definitely something was out of kilter, and it wasn't about what his Second Amendment rights are. What was out of kilter is the fact that he had other things that he wasn't supposed to have access to. And we don't know how out of alignment some of those other firearms may have been for him. I think that plays back into his state of mind, whether it's rational or not. I think it also plays back into potentially some other criminality. There may have been other things at play here. And, we can go back to his disability and perhaps what type of drugs he was on. We don't know if he was a substance abuser or not. We don't know if he was abusing alcohol, and we don't know what kind of company he may have been keeping that may have higher alerted him initially and got him going in that case. If you're out there, dealing arms and hand grenades, and I'm not saying that he was, or anyone goes that far, but something was out of kilter there. And so there is an indicator that something amped him up more than just the ding dong ditch stuff. So when you're dealing with, and believe me, I deal with all kinds of addicts all day. And when they start dealing with some, little thing like ding dong ditch, it instantly goes much further. Because one of the things that they deal with are people that are after their dope stash, people that are after their weapon stash, people that are after them. And it becomes this real vicious circle. And so I would say that we might see some of that coming out in the coming days, but that's just a good guess on my part.
Yeah, and guys, CBS did report that he had 20 tactical grenades. Well, a mixture of 20 tactical and smoke grenades. So tactical grenades and smoke grenades. Joe, what's your thought on all this?
Well, when it comes to weapons, I have weapons in my house. I have a few weapons in my house. For me, a lot of them are collectibles. They don't get fired. They're for display. I do have some other weapons, but the grenade thing is kind of concerning to me because we don't know much background on this guy. Was he honorably discharged from the military? Was he given a general discharge? Why is he disabled? Was he put out on a medical? Was he put out on a mental health? We don't really know much background on this guy to go to, state of mind other than the fact that he's a disabled vet who is, getting services through the VA. We don't know if he's getting just medical services, if he's getting mental services. We don't, like I said, we don't know much about him. We don't know, what level of PTSD he has, if he's the kind of has flashbacks, I'm not going to put his name out there, but I have an Army friend of mine that some 20 years later is still fighting flashback issues with PTSD. He has nightmares to the point where there's been times where I had to go talk him down because he's standing out front in his underwear holding a broom thinking he's got a rifle in his hand. So there are going to be some things that probably come out about this guy when it comes time for the trial. I think, prosecution wise, they got the fact that this guy laid in wait and fired 2 shots. We just don't know if the 2 shots were made, for the 2 kids, or if one was actually a warning shot and the other one hit its mark. And the fact that, him and his family left and went to a hotel in LaPorte is going to be, another state of mind. Why did you go, why did you leave your domicile and go somewhere else? Again, I think that the defense is going to have a lot more that they can put their hands on than what the prosecution is going to be able to put their hands on. So it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out, because I think once, records are subpoenaed, from the VA, from the Army hospitals, any Army hospital or any medical facility where he might have been treated, any kind of disciplinary record that he might have, had in the military, if he had any Article 15s, if he had an Article 32, there's going to be a lot of things that, there's still a lot of incomplete information out there to really, get a good picture of this guy's state of mind. Other than the fact that, he had grenades in his house, which is stupid to begin with, because, they deteriorate over time, and, that's a ticking time bomb with or without the pin in it.
Yeah. And guys, as we progress later on, we do discuss PTSD a little bit more in detail, because we definitely think it's going to be something the defense will utilize. But now let's get to number 6. Okay, so now this brings us to technology as witness. So this I thought was important, because Julian had his cell phone. He was recording it, probably going on social media. So now you got a recording of the child taking his last breath. So Julian's phone captured the prank, shots, and the aftermath. So now you got some damning evidence right here. So it's haunting evidence. So jury hears victim's final breaths. Modern trials increasingly rely on digital, what we call silent witnesses, but they do require on digital because, that's today's day and age. I'll go with Joe first. What impact does it have on jurors if it does go to trial when a victim's last moments are preserved by technology? Now, granted, if I was this guy's lawyer and I knew that there's this phone that's got this child with all this stuff happening, got the evidence here, it's got the video of it, then's got the video of an 11-year-old taking their last breath, you put that in front of a jury, and they will, even though they're not supposed to, they're going to make that decision based on emotion. But what's your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, if I was his attorney, I'd be doing everything to fight tooth and nail to get that phone excluded, because the video of that poor child being shot and gasping for his life as he took his last breaths is going to be impactful. I mean, it's going to be totally damning. And even if some sort of objection comes up and they're told to disregard what they've seen, you can't unsee that shit. You can't. There is no way at that point in your brain can you still be a biased individual. That video that child has on his phone is going to be very, very, very powerful.
Yeah, and Russ, I did a show with Russ. Russ, remember this, where you were interviewed by me, technically, and then we talked about 3 high-profile inmates you dealt with, and one of them was Whitaker. And as I was watching the video, I never heard of Whitaker. So I was watching some videos on Whitaker, and Whitaker, during his court case, they played an audio of a woman being tortured and killed, and the people were just leaving. the jurors, everyone, because they couldn't handle this young girl being tortured, her screams and all this other stuff. So I can just imagine now, not just audio, but video. But what's your thoughts on this, Russ? How powerful is that for if this does go to trial?
Well, yeah, it's Bittaker. Yeah, I mean, for that, it made all the difference. I think that what we'll see here, and the defense, if they stipulate to the fact that yes, he did shoot him, and depending on what kind of defense they put on, they'll make a motion to exclude that evidence based on that it's prejudicial. And I mean, they could conceivably win that, but they would win that at the loss of being able to say that he didn't do it. So I think that what they've got going on there is they just basically have a really bad client. There's nothing there that they're going to really be able to work with that's going to help them, because if they do one thing, they're just going to cut off their nose to spite their face. So and I know that they're not going to want to have that introduced as evidence, and it will make it into evidence, and it will make it before a jury if they don't try some tactics like that. But it's going to end up there, and so I think that they may end up taking a deal, and the deal might be, as we saw in the Koberger cases. Hey, we agree not to do the death penalty if you plead guilty to first-degree murder, and you agree that you are not going to file an appeal. Boom, and that's how that's my prediction as to how it's going to end up.
Yeah, I think the prosecutor I mentioned for this one here, that he's going to look for capital, but won't be seeking the death penalty. But again, that's just what I'm hearing. But so the relevance, Texas rule of evidence is evidence must be relevant to proven or disproven a material fact. So Julian's video would likely show that the boys were unarmed. That's important. That their actions were a prank, not a threat, because I guess you'll see the context of the video, and maybe you'll see.
But they can stipulate to that, though. The defense can.
Oh yeah, and then you got that their action. Okay, we're pregnant. The sequence of events leading to the shooting. So this goes directly to whether Gonzalo Leon Jr. acted with reasonable fear or whether it was unjustified use of deadly force, because it establishes context, prank versus threat. So the video is highly relevant. So there would be a push for that video, because it definitely strengthens the prosecutor's case. And it said, obviously, you're going to have to do authentication. Might mute words. So the prosecution would need to show the video is authentic. For example, it really was recorded at that time by Julian without alteration. This can be done through testimony from the cousin who was with them, metadata from the device, or law enforcement chain of custody. If properly authenticated, the video can be omitted. Now, hearsay concerns is videos are usually considered demonstrative evidence, not hearsay, unless they are spoken words being offered for the truth of the matter. If Julian is heard saying something in the video, defense may object as hearsay, but courts often admit such statements under exception, so present sense impression or excited utterance. And then the probative value versus prejudicial impact. Defense might argue the video is too emotionally powerful, which is what Joe and Russ said, because it involves a child victim. The judge must weigh probative value, shows prank, disproves threat, rebuts self-defense, and prejudicial risk. Jury may be swayed by sympathy rather than facts. In practice, so look at that battle. So this could show that the video shows that it was a prank. They were not a threat. So there goes your self-defense, but then you're risking prejudicial risk. Jury may be swayed by sympathy rather than facts. So the judge, if this does go to trial, the judge may have to weigh that in. To be honest, if I was the judge, I probably would allow the video because of the context. It's not just about the kid dying, but you also have the context that it was a prank. They weren't armed. They were running away. And in practice, judges often allow it with jury instructions to focus on facts. And the strategic use, prosecutions to show Leon fired without justification since the prank was harmless. And the defense may try to argue video doesn't capture Leon's perspective or that he couldn't know it was a prank. So the bottom line, Julian's video would very likely be admissible in court if properly authenticated. because it goes to the heart of whether this was self-defense or an unjustified killing. The main fight would be over its emotional impact versus factual relevance. And that's everything that you guys clearly just said. Now, again, Russ.
I was going to say, and as you see, he's really painted himself into a corner. If he says one thing, another thing can instantly be disproven true. If he takes the thing that's proven true, then instantly he's backed himself into another corner. He's in a really, really bad position.
Yeah, and I really do like that argument where it's like, as a prosecutor, I may not want to put a kid dying, and I definitely probably wouldn't use it to sway someone emotionally, but if the video needs to be done for context, I'm going to use that video for context. So I would tell people, even the family, hey, listen, I don't really want to bring this video in. I'm not trying to sway people emotionally, but this video captures the context that these kids were just doing a prank. They did not have a weapon. They were not a threat, and I need to get this video in. So it's not a way to sway people into making an emotional decision, but rather this is the only thing I got right now to showcase context that it was a prank, and then it could be supported by the cousin who was a witness. Now, a key part of this episode I wanted to put in, and this is just for people that may have kids, social media, and risk. This is a real big thing nowadays because they're playing games because they want to be, Mr. Popular on TikTok or Miss Popular on TikTok or YouTube, whatever it is. But the problem is they're putting themselves in risk. And the sad thing is these social media outlets reward that. You do something foolish, will make you go viral. That's how it is. So it actually motivates these kids to do foolish shit. So kids film pranks for TikTok, YouTube, behavior amplified by online culture. Innocent games become public performances, raising risk. So I'll go with Russ first and Joe. Do children today, and guys, we have to mention this because I want to get a little bit in the mind of the 11-year-old, but also people that are going to be watching this, that their kids should, as long as it's filtered, the kids should know that this is dangerous. You're picking the wrong house. I'm not minimizing what Leon did, but there's a lot of Leons out there. You're messing with the wrong people. Do children today fully understand the risk of filming pranks for social media? So I'll go with who am I going with first, Joe or Russ?
You said me, but
okay, Russ, I'll go with you first. Russ, sorry about that.
No, I think that the only way to look at it is that, I mean, people may not like this, but kids are never capable of evaluating risk in the way that adults are. And so kids are going to naturally do silly, stupid things a lot of the time. And so I think that, this kid, did he pick the wrong house? Yes, obviously. Did he have reason or expectation, or could he have, figured out in his own mind that this is not a smart thing to do? No, he's 11 years old. I mean, and he's, an innocent type that, he wanted to do a prank that was, funny to him. And I think that, that's unfortunately, you can't impress upon kids because they're not developed in that way. And we see this time after time. I mean, even with like the juveniles I worked with who, were a lot more street savvy and so forth, they still can't appreciate the gravity of the things that they do and the positions that they put themselves into because they do not understand the risk at all. And so, I mean, he's a kid. He's an 11-year-old. This is what 11-year-olds do. This is what I did as an 11-year-old.
Yeah, and you want to hear something funny? I love what you're saying, Russ, because here's something funny about this. If Julian didn't get shot, and let's say we did the right thing and they were playing this game at 11 p.m. at night. So obviously, hey, why do we have an 11-year-old walking around at 11 p.m. at night? They would probably get arrested for doing the prank. Let's say this guy, Leon, just wound up calling the police and they got arrested. The parents would be all over their kid's ass. What the hell are you doing ringing people's doorbells at 11 p.m.? And they would say, well, don't you know how dangerous it is? Because there's another danger here. Not so much about people coming out with guns and shooting you, but what about you go to the wrong house and they take you in and they kidnap you? We got predators. You don't know what doorbell you're ringing. And then one day you happen to ring the wrong doorbell and you're taken into someone's home. I mean, it's extremely dangerous. And I don't want to minimize the fact that these kids should not be out there at 11 p.m. Ringing doorbells. Not excusing what Leon did, of course, but also put it out there. You know, what the hell are you doing at 11 p.m. at 11 years old, ringing on random people's doorbell? I mean, again, it's hard to say this because I'm not minimizing Leon's accountability, but that type of action that Julian doing is pushing you more towards a risk. You know, I'm not saying it's, you know, it doesn't minimize what Leon done, but you're doing behavior that's extremely risky. What's your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you got to face facts that, you know, younger kids are doing shit today that we would have never dreamed of doing at our age. You know, you got kids that were out there playing a knockout game, you know, knocking random people out on streets just for fun. You got kids they're robbing convenience stores with weapons because the only thing on their mind is the fast money and the adrenaline rush. You know, kids are doing things today that we'd have never thought of, you know, and I'm not saying that I didn't do any stupid shit as a kid, because I did plenty of stupid shit as a kid. But, you know, the big difference, you know, in our day back then is we had a parent at home that tore our ass from the bone and made sure that, you know, we were in the house and doing what we were supposed to do. You know, a lot of families today, you know, both parents have to work, and, you know, neither parent may be home because they're busting their ass and trying to make ends meet. And therefore, the streets are raising the kids. And when you get a group of kids together, what are kids going to do? Kids are going to do stupid shit. And that's just the way it is. You know, kids are kids. And, you know, it's always going to be that way. And I'm not minimizing it at all. You know, this guy's shooting this kid in the back. But, you know, kids are doing, you know, in the state of Texas, number one, you know, ding dong ditch is actually considered criminal misconduct. Number two, you know, social media has over glorified a bunch of shit that they shouldn't be, and it needs to stop. You know, there's a lot of state agencies here in Texas and county agencies, mine included. I'm not allowed to have TikTok on my phone because of that reason. And there's, you know, the Texas DOC, they're not allowed to have TikTok on their phones either because of that. They could actually get fired for it. You know, it's crazy the way social media, you know, you see these videos of kids in their street cars doing donuts and shit like that. You know, that's the kind of shit I used to do, you know, and believe you me, I took plenty of ass beatings because my poor dad, every car he owned, I ragged out, you know, because I was a kid. I was 16 years old. You know, that's what we do. We push boundaries. We push limits. But, you know, you grapple with the fact that kids nowadays at a younger age are doing shit that adults were doing 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And then you add social media on top of it. Hey, look, you know, look at me. Look at me do this. Look at me do that. You know, it just, these social media outlets, you know, YouTube, TikTok is the worst, you know, as far as, you know, over glorifying this shit. You know, and that's something that needs to stop. You know, they need to get together. Anything that shows any kind of criminal activity, criminal conduct, you know, any kind of criminal misconduct, they shouldn't allow it to be played on social media, because when it's allowed to be replayed on these social media outlets, other kids are thinking it's okay to do. You know, when in Rome, do what the Romans do.
And by the way, that's the trouble now with, you know, back in the day when we were younger, we all sat down in one room. We all knew what everybody was watching because we only had one or two TVs. Now everybody has their own little tablet. You don't know what they're scrolling through. And the next thing you know, they're picking up on these trends. And you're like, what are you doing? Where are you getting that from? TikTok. It's like, don't do that. So as much as people want to say, well, you got to monitor what these kids watching on tablets. I mean, unless you really take it away from them and they can never watch it, you can't control what they're going to watch, because if they're not watching it at home, they're going to watch it in school. They're going to watch it at a party. I mean, I think it's not so much about us controlling what they watch, but going after where the social media outlets are doing. You know, I would love to control everything my child does, but that's impossible. And it really is impossible. But maybe we could really start getting at these social medias. Like if Ding Dong Ditch led to this kid's death, then why doesn't the family now sue TikTok? Go after TikTok, because they're the one that's promoting this. You know, see if you can sue that entity and get your millions, because if they want to keep on promoting stuff like this, then maybe they need one big lawsuit to humble them. You know, because I do believe they just do things for the views, to get the ad money and all this other junk. And next thing you know, this happens. And I'll guarantee you that kid was getting ready to post that video on some social media platform, most likely TikTok. I had something with community impact, but I think we could skip over that because I don't want to get too long. But I have two other parts I want to do real quick. One is, or three other parts. The bigger pattern, deadly prank. So there is a national trend. I looked at a couple of things. I saw in California there was a teen killed in a prank car chase. I saw a teen shot or killed. I don't know if they were, but they were trying, instead of a ding dong ditch, they were kicking the door as if it was a home invasion. Could you imagine that? You're home late at night and someone's kicking the damn door like as if they're going to break into your house. And you know what's funny? A movie that actually was one of the scariest movies I ever seen kind of started like a ding dong ditch. It's a movie called Strangers. If anybody remembers that, because they're all mad and they wind up getting into the home, but they start with, ringing the doorbell very late at night, like at 3:30 in the morning. So let's see. Now this is the part with the PT. These are the add-ins, guys. So I wanted to go back to the PTSD thing real quick. So Leon's background, Army veteran, potential PTSD diagnosis. You figure if they do go this route, we don't know, but this is what this channel does. We try to put things out there. If they do go this route, the defense strategy could be argue PTSD, cause hypervigilance, exaggerated threat response, impaired judgment. What's needed? Well, like Joe said before, medical psychiatric records, expert testimony linking PTSD to the incident, that matters. Service history establishing combat exposure. Limits, PTSD cannot excuse lying in wait, like Russ said, shooting a fleeing child, or attempting to evade arrest, which is on the back end of this. Prosecution will counter and say premeditation, calculated ambush, excessive firepower, undermine PTSD defense. So now I'll go to Russ first. Should PTSD reduce accountability when the victim is an innocent child, or does responsibility outweigh conditions?
So I would say on that if PTSD mitigates something, it doesn't matter whether it's a child or not, because the mitigation is about the person's ability to control their perceptions. So the larger picture is really to decide whether or not we're going to let it mitigate anything at all. I think that in this case, the only way PTSD is going to do something for this guy is if he has a history of it. He's had other issues with regard to it, and we can't leave out, because we don't know yet. Once again, regards to drugs and substances, which he might have been using, that might have exacerbated it, and then he's opening up a whole new can of worms for them to attack him on. So that's the way that I look at it. Is there perhaps a place for PSD to mitigate something? Yes. Is it this case? No.
Yeah, I agree, and that's kind of something we've discussed throughout this, because I know that's going to be a strong component. Maybe it looks like he was already putting it in there, the defense lawyer. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? Anything on there?
Yeah, I think PTSD is going to play a portion of this. I don't think it's going to mitigate or outweigh what's transpired. For the prosecution side, they're going to bring up his Army discipline. Anybody who's been deployed knows what rules of engagement are. That's going to play a factor. For the defense side, they're going to look at, like I said, we don't know anything about it, but, about this guy's history. Has he received any kind of inpatient psychiatric care through the VA, through the military? Has he ever been hospitalized for any kind of mental defects? What kind of disabilities does he have? Because when it comes to disabled vets, it's not just physical. You got mental disabilities too. So, all that's going to have to be looked at. But as far as this guy being diminished capacity, I don't think that's really going to play a factor in this, because number one, it was a kid. Number two, he was unarmed. which are two big no-nos. Number one, for any kind of Army soldier who's deployed, even if you're in Kuwait, wherever, there's rules of engagement. You can't just shoot somebody to shoot somebody. They have to be a clear, direct, imminent threat to you. But at the same time, we don't know what this guy's seen, what this guy went through while he was deployed. Why is he disabled? What level of PTSD does he have? Are there any inpatient psychiatric records on this guy? Has he ever been committed? Has he ever received services through any kind of mental, because vets don't necessarily have to go through the VA center. They can go to outpatient services. So they can get services like through the Burke Center, Spindletop, MHMR, any kind of mental, behavioral center. So there's going to be a lot of things that play in this. I don't necessarily see that this guy is going to take a capital murder charge. I think even first degree murder is going to be a stretch. I think if anything, this guy's going to take a lesser murder charge or a manslaughter charge because, I just don't. I think that the defense is probably going to have more bite in the bone than the prosecution. It's clear and it's understood and it's fact that he shot this kid and killed him. There's no disputing that. That happened. His finger on the trigger caused the death of a juvenile. And that's something that's just fact. It can't be undone. It can't be erased. It can't be neglected, overlooked. It's fact. Now it's a matter of what led him to it. And I just think that the defense is going to be able to mount a better position from the military side on this. As tragic as the situation is, I don't see them having enough or even being able to convict him of capital murder in this case.
Yeah, and guys, I want to sum this whole part up before we get to our last question. So this does relate to if they do decide to go the legal route, trial, whatever it is. So the defense would argue, and we all touched on this, but this would be the least likely. Leon could claim he believed there was a threat to his home and his safety. Texas has strong castle doctrines and stand your ground laws, so the defense may want to put that up. The challenge will be surveillance. The cousin's account and the prank video suggests the boys were running away and were unarmed. Firing at retreating kids undermines the reasonable fear of imminent harm, which is required. So the assessment there is weak, but it's the most obvious route. His lawyers might try to reframe it as a split-second decision in that dark, emphasizing emphasizing fear rather than intent. But we know that's not true, right? He concealed himself, waited. So we know that's really not a good route for them to take. Even Russ said that would be outright stupid. Then we're going to go right to the mental health side, right? Diminished capacity. Leon's a U.S. Army veteran. If there's documented PTSD, paranoia, or another mental health condition, defense could argue diminished capacity to form intent. Challenge here is Texas does not have a broad diminished capacity defense. Insanity is a very high bar. He would need to show he didn't know the act was wrong at the time. His post-shooting behavior, waiting in the shadows, multiple weapons in the home suggest planning and awareness. And also, he fled. He left. That shows some level of guilt or remorse. So this might mitigate sentencing, but unlikely to prevent conviction. And that's what Joe just said. Then you got challenging the capital murder upgrade. Argument B, his defense could focus less on winning outright and more on preventing an upgrade to capital murder because Julian was 11. I think that's kind of where the prosecutor, I believe, had said, we're not doing, we may do capital murder, but we're not pushing the death penalty, more of life without parole. So that challenge, that's Texas Penal Code 19.03, explicitly includes victims aged 10 to 14. If evidence is solid, the upgrade is legally justified. Strategy, argue it was reckless manslaughter or criminally negligent homicide rather than intentional murder, trying to frame the second shot as uncontrolled or panic, but not deliberate. Assessment, this is probably his strongest path. Fight, intent, push for a lesser included offense, but the problem is you shot twice. Let me put that out there. He shot twice. So I think maybe the first one's reckless, but the second one I think is definitely going to be seen as intentional. And I want to add this to that law about the death penalty. Me and Joe and Russ were looking at this before the show. In Texas, a capital murder conviction involving a victim aged 10 to 14 carries these possible sentences: life in prison without parole or the death penalty. Fox 26 Houston reports that even if the charge is upgraded to capital murder, prosecutors would not be able to seek the death penalty. Why the discrepancy? Texas law allows for the death penalty in capital murder cases involving victims under 15. However, the Houston District Attorney's Office appears to be pursuing capital murder with the intention of a life sentence without parole only, rather than seeking the death penalty. This is the definition here. So under Section 1903B 10 of the Texas Penal Code, capital murder includes intentionally murdering an individual under 15 years of age. But here's the verbiage. Texas Penal Code says capital murder, a type of criminal homicide, can apply in a case when the person murders an individual 10 years of age or older, but younger than 15 years of age. Chapter 12 of the code states that a person convicted of a capital felony faces life in prison without the opportunity for parole or the death penalty. Now, the reason why me and Joe and Russ were looking at this is it could just say 15 or under instead of like doing, 10 to 14 or whatever it was. I think Joe's got something here, if you could read it. But basically, murder of a child under 10 is already covered by another section of the capital murder statute. That's Texas Penal Code 1903A8. Murder of a child 10 to 14 falls under the specific 10 or older but younger than 15 clause, which is 1903A9. So an individual commits capital murder if the individual murders an individual under 15 years of age. That's generally. And this means that the victim is under 15, the offense is classified as capital murder. But again, it's the way it's written. It's the one from the one that's under 10, because technically it's 15 and under, but the one that it's under 10 is covered under another law. So technically, we just merged it and said technically it's 15 and under. So let me just get so challenging the capital murder upgrade. So then the strategy, we argue it was reckless manslaughter. We talked about that, or criminally negligent homicide. And I talked about, I think the second bullet would be a concern with that. Evidentiary suppression, outside the fact that he concealed himself and shot him running away. Evidentiary suppression. If law enforcement mishandled the video, the search of his home where grenades and 20 plus guns were found, or other key evidence, the defense might move to suppress it. Challenge, unless major errors occurred in the warrant process. This is a long shot. The assessment could chip away at the prosecutor's narrative, but unlikely to erase the core facts. And the sympathy, veteran status mitigation, argument would be humanize Leon, a veteran with no prior violent record, if true, who snapped under stress. Defense would aim at sentencing, not acquittal. So again, we got him. There's not much we can do. So how do we get more lenient in how he's going to be sentenced? That's what Joe specifically just said, and Russ too. Basically, he's guilty. So now if I was the defense lawyer, how do we minimize the sanction? How do we minimize the sentence? So this won't win the case, but it might be the best strategy to avoid life without parole if convicted of capital murder. So the strongest overall route is his most viable defense is to challenge intent and push for a lesser included offense like manslaughter, which Russ mentioned before, and Joe, or negligent homicide, portraying the shooting as a reckless overreaction rather than an intentional act. And this could spare him from capital murder conviction and life without parole. So, I mean, again, is this emotionally based? I mean, he had time in between to think it through. He could have loaded his gun, because I don't think bullets are supposed to be loaded in the gun. I don't know how Texas law works. So, I mean, you got preparation in the loading of the gun. You got preparation and going out there and waiting for them to come. And then after you do the kill, and then you run off. So, so now let's see. Hold on, let me see. And then once an offense qualifies as a capital felony, Section 12.31 establishes the potential punishment. If the state elects to seek the death penalty, an individual adjudged guilty, or this should be adjudicated, or a judge guilty of a capital felony in a case in which the state seeks the death penalty shall be punished by life without parole or by death. Thus, in capital felony cases where prosecutors pursue the death penalty, the sentencing options are either life without parole or death. So the verdict here will be, so although the legal framework would allow the death penalty, current public statements and local reporting strongly indicate that prosecutors will not seek it. They plan to pursue a capital murder charge with life in prison without parole as the likely maximum sentence. So I got one question here.
Okay.
I have, okay, Russ, because I have one more question here, and then Okay, you have something?
Okay, so anyway, I don't know what all the ins and outs are of where they're at, but that prosecutor is trying to screw up the case, in my opinion, by hearing that. Why would you take the death penalty off the table if it's your intent to get him to plead something else? Why would he do that? So now he's being put in a position where if he doesn't threaten the death penalty, he has to take it to trial. And why would he want to take it to trial when you put it in front of 12 people that you don't know what they're going to do? That makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, and I agree. And you want to hear something funny? When something doesn't make sense, I look from the pressure. I wonder if you have two concerns here: a murdered child and then a veteran. So then you get people like the prosecutor or whatever it is on the outside. Well, how do I balance both? I mean, how do I, please this crowd and please this crowd? When at the end of the day, it's where the accountability would be. I agree with you, Russ. Start high and you can always negotiate. But I have a feeling, and I could be wrong, but you never know, the pressure of a murdered child versus a veteran who could be seen as somebody with PTSD.
I agree, but the tail of the tape is going to be measured against things like those grenades. What was he actually doing? And so even though he might initially, with the veteran label, get a little bit of play, what comes out with, well, what was he doing with those grenades? Was he selling them? Was he buying them? If he was buying them, what was he going to do with them? That evaporates very quickly under that, considering he already killed the little kid, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And I got one last section here, guys, and that's it. I got to cover the bad parenting doesn't mean the kid deserves to die. We understand that. But I got to cover this with the fact that he was out at 11, because that's another argument that was coming my way. So Julian was only 11 years old, yet he was still outside close to 11 p.m. Family gathering. So I think they were having a family gathering, and sometimes during family gatherings, kids often have looser boundaries during celebrations. We get that. But he wasn't, be at the house. He was in the neighborhood. Raises questions of supervision, neighborhood trust, and generational differences in parenting norms. So there's an important distinction here. Even if some argue he shouldn't have been out, it does not justify the extreme response. The responsibility for restraint lies with the adult who chose lethal force. So the question I have is going to be about childhood freedoms versus safety risks in modern communities. So should late night freedom for children be viewed as a normal part of childhood or as a parenting risk in today's climate of fear and violence? So this is the last question, Joe, and then we'll go to Russ. But Joe, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, a lot of it depends on the child and the maturity level of the child. Nowadays kids are so impressionable when being around other kids that I don't know that it's a good thing to take that risk with your child, to let them, have the freedom of doing what they want. Now, if they're a responsible individual, 11 years old, it should be a no-brainer. Your ass is in the house when it gets dark, period. And I'm not saying, that this child's parents are bad parents, by no means. But, a lot of it depends on the individual child, the maturity level. When I was 14, 15, I actually had my driver's license at the age of 15 under a hardship because, my father was the only person in the household that drove. And, my mom didn't drive. She didn't drive a vehicle. She didn't have a license. And, when dad had surgery, somebody had to drive him. Therefore, I was able to get a hardship license. For the most part, I treated that responsibly. But, when I got around my friends, not so much. So a lot of it depends on the maturity level of the child, what they've demonstrated in the past. If, the child is at a friend's house directly next door to you, that's one thing. But, 11-year-olds shouldn't be roaming neighborhoods at 11 p.m. at night. If they're hanging out in front of the house, listening to music, or they're in the garage, listening to music, cutting it up, whatever the case is, it's one thing. But it's totally different, especially in Houston, Texas, where, these kids are roaming around these neighborhoods. Some of them are not so good neighborhoods, So, it's just a lot of it depends on the child. But I I think, parenting, especially with the, inventions of the tablets and all the modern technology we got going on. I think there's not really enough parental influence in these kids' life. It's one thing to give them a little bit of freedom, give them a little bit of leash and let them cut up and have some fun. But if they're doing something that could possibly put their lives at risk, it's time to reel them back in.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about this too? I don't know what made them target that house, or maybe this is a neighborhood they're all familiar with. Maybe they target this house often. Was this the first time they ever targeted this house, or is this the house they keep on targeting? Maybe this guy said, even though it's wrong, I had enough with these damn kids, and now he tries to position himself to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because again, I don't know if this is the first time they hit the house, if this was a complete stranger to them, or maybe they do this every night. I mean, maybe you check out the TikTok videos and you find out these kids are doing this, all the time. And at one point, maybe someone just snaps, but Russ, what's your thoughts on that?
So I'll say two things. One thing is in general, in that should parents be more responsible? Should they attempt to stop this kind of behavior? Yes. When I bring it down to the specific though, we don't even know if those parents knew those kids were out or not. We don't know how they've treated this type of behavior or misbehavior in the past, and we simply don't know. What might have sparked it this time. If they did know, the kids might have said, "Hey, we're going to take a lap around the subdivision or something." We don't have enough specifics. Would it be nice if every parent was more engaged? Yes. But with regards to this specific incident, I just don't think we know enough about it yet. But we probably will.
Yeah, my thing is, if my kids have a TikTok channel and they're posting on it, you like to think that you would know it, but there's a case you may not, because they can these kids are more savvy with technology than we'll ever be. They'll make up accounts that you think are their main account, and then they got 5 other ones that you know nothing about. I mean, how many girls right now or boys have, what's it called, the fan stuff? What's it called? My Only Fans or something, whatever it is. You think their parents know that they're doing these freaking videos? My Only Club or something? I forgot. I know the name. It just escapes me right now. All right, guys, anything you like? This is a great dialogue, and maybe this would be another case we can explore into. We're still waiting on updates. Guys, if you follow the channel, we're still waiting on updates for the Harrow case. I know they're doing a lot of stuff on Kohlberger, but I'm kind of going to leave that be for now. I was very impressed with the interview from, is it Nancy Grace or whatever it is, crime show, where she interviewed actually the Gonsalves family, the father and mother. It was a powerful interview because they were very upset with the prosecutor in that case. They said they didn't even know that there was going to be a plea until almost the last minute. They thought the plea was something that they were joking around with, but they weren't going to really take seriously. And they wanted the death penalty, and they are very upset. They're advocates for the death penalty. I tried to reach out to the mom to see if she would like to come on our show, because I would love to see the support that we could also provide her. But that's support that can help us too, because he says, you know what, some of these states have the death penalty, but they really only use for bargaining. They're never going to plan on using it. So what they do is they have the death penalty and they put it up for a bargain. But at the end of the day, they're hoping that the bargain passes and that they're never really going to push the death penalty anyway. And it was just a really good interview. And I think it's Nancy Grace or whatever it is. It's a crime, law and crime, or true crime. But hey, Joe, anything you like to say in closing?
Yeah, my heart goes out to this 11-year-old family who was shot and killed tragically, and prank gone horribly freaking wrong. Words will never express, the amount of sympathy, the amount of sorrow I feel for them, and the hell that they're going through now. I do believe that this guy's going to be convicted in the end. Like I said, it's a no-brainer. You shoot a kid in the back when he's running away from you. You're going to get smoked. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Like I said, I think it's going to be an uphill battle for both teams, and I think it's going to be a matter of who gets the best evidence first when it comes to this trial. But this guy needs to do time. Absolutely needs to do time. I think he knows he's going to do time. And it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. And like I said, my prayers are definitely with this young boy's family.
And Joe, just in case, we are looking. If you guys have a true crime you want us to kind of go into, feel free to email us. And I'm going to put, if Joe's okay with it, Joe, can I put your email up there?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so let me. I'm going to do. So is it K5JEP3 at gmail.com?
Yep.
So, guys, if you want to reach out to Joe, this is his email. Again, if you have if you guys have a crime you want, you can email us all directly, and we'll try to cover. If you guys like our coverage, recommend some more, because we're still new to this. We're not experts at true crime, but we do provide a perspective. There's a lot of crimes that we're unaware of, but when we do deep dive, we do deep dive. I mean, these are discussions that we have for hours before we even go on the show, and we try to hit up every angle to not just answer your question for today, but to answer your questions that you may have as things move forward. And ultimately, it's to give you a clearer picture, because the stuff we're teaching you now or showing you guys now could be stuff that could be applied almost in any case. Hey, Rush, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want people to know that every one of us here, obviously, we are, 100% behind the family. We understand what happened. The only thing that we're doing is gaming out what the prosecution might do, gaming out what the defense might try, and it's a mental exercise primarily for us, because we've dealt with these type of things. We've dealt with these type of individuals. And, in no way should anyone think that we're in any way sympathetic to this guy. We're just trying to figure out what happened and why.
And Russ, that's your email, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And guys, I love what Russ said in my closing thoughts, guys. We're just trying to provide so many different perspectives so you guys can get a clear understanding of how both sides view things. And also, sometimes we try to get into the mind of the people that do the foolish acts, because I think we pretty much have an understanding of it. I think that's the skill that we're bringing to the table, because when you work around them, you can't help but absorb safely some of it. And believe it or not, working in corrections, our job safely, tactical empathy, as Russ would say, is to get into their heads. And I think we're pretty good with that. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. Hopefully you guys enjoy the content, and we'll see you soon with either a follow-up on this, follow-up on Emmanuel Harrow, or maybe a new case. As always, stay safe.